can say is wow! We're finally back in Washington, D.C. And look at this. I recognize this place from the penny. It's the epic, it's the wonderful, it's the world-famous Lincoln Memorial. And would you look at the size of it? I always forget just how gargantuan it is until I come back and see it in person again. Seriously, it's mammoth. It's like some sort of ancient Greek or Roman temple. But instead of Zeus or Olympus or some kind of god or emperor, this temple has enshrined a man who fought for government for, of, and by the people. Shh. I need quiet respect, please. Wow, there he is. Abraham Lincoln. Born the 12th of February in 1809. And enshrined in stone forever. That, my friends, is a huge statue, but I have to admit to you, as gigantic as it is, sometimes, because the room is so huge, it can actually seem kind of small. It's kind of like the Mona Lisa in France. Everyone always says, look how small it is. It's really not that small. It's just up against a huge wall all by itself. And we got the same thing going on here. That Lincoln sitting down, including his chair, is about 20 feet tall, maybe a little bit less, but basically 4 alleys tall. Also, people tend to stand really far away, making themselves look bigger in the picture compared to Lincoln here. Wow, this is amazing. And behind Lincoln, over here to the side, the Gettysburg Address, which is his most famous speech, and I believe here on the other side is the speech from his second inauguration, just before he was assassinated, really. It's a great speech, and it's immortalized here, hopefully, forever. You guys ever notice that on the back of the penny, where it shows the Lincoln Memorial, it also shows a really tiny Lincoln? It took me until I was about 20 to figure that one out. I don't know, I never saw it before. Wow, that's amazing. It's been about 7 years since I was last in Washington, D.C. I've been planning to come back for a while, but this time I'm just passing through, sort of just a layover between New York and going back home to LA. But I've still got a little time for sightseeing, so that's exactly what I'm gonna do today. After all, I'm a taxpayer, so these are my monuments. I want to keep an eye on them. Wow, check that out. From Lincoln's seat up there, he's got a great view of the Washington Monument and the Capitol building way in the background there. And also, of course, the Lincoln Monument's giant, beautiful, reflecting pool, which at the moment is empty. Oh man, look at that, huh? No water. Well, I mean a little water. But the reflecting pool is more or less empty. And what's funny about that is that it's empty almost every single time I've ever been to Washington, D.C. I've seriously been here a ton of times, and there's either very little water only in the middle, or they've drained it out for some more construction or refurbishment. What the heck? I gotta time my visits better. I mean, that just feels weird that you could step down into the reflecting pool, no problem. Maybe it's just closed for a little cleaning. That's right, scrub it. You scrub Lincoln's pool now. Scrub it good! The Lincoln Memorial sits at the far western end of the National Mall, which goes all the way down that way to the U.S. Capitol. There's a ton of stuff along the National Mall, ton of monuments and different historical things, museums, and they're all pretty much free. But before I head all the way down there, I think I'd like to check out Abraham Lincoln's old house. Because before Abraham Lincoln was enshrined in our hearts forever, let's not forget, he lived in this city. I see it. Come on, this way. Oh, wow, look at that. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The most famous address in the country. The house of the President of the United States of America. This is probably the most surreal place to visit in Washington, D.C. First constructed over 200 years ago, it's housed every president since John Adams, which means every president except for George Washington. Famously burned down by the British in 1814, which was part of the War of 1812, so those dates are a little confusing. It was rebuilt and then basically, other than the exterior, rebuilt again in the 1940s, I think? Was it Truman who rebuilt the White House? I forget. Either way, every president other than George Washington has lived in that house. And that, of course, includes President Abraham Lincoln. Obviously, there's a lot of security around the White House today. See that guy right there behind that black thing? He is a Secret Service member. Although how secret can he be? He's standing right there. This is about as close to the house as we can get these days. But back in Lincoln's day, you could just walk right up to the executive mansion and sort of hang out and wait to see if you could see the president. Of course, all that changed when President Lincoln was assassinated. And it was because a group of counterfeiters tried to steal Abraham Lincoln's body back in Illinois. The Secret Service, which before that had just been in charge of busting counterfeiters, was given the gig of protecting the president. However you feel about the current president or the past president or the president before that or before that, you gotta admit it's pretty cool to live in a country where we vote one of ourselves into the highest position in the land. And theoretically, at least, an ordinary American like Abraham Lincoln could still inhabit the White House. Think of all the great names that have been in that building, all the crazy decisions that have affected millions of people that happened right in there. Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and hey, don't forget Jimmy Carter. It's hard even to think of the White House as being a real, actual place because in addition to being this historic, kind of surreal place where the president kind of runs the show, it's also been in a heck of a lot of movies and TV shows. Independence Day is coming to mind. Gosh, Bill Pullman was a great president. I mean, that is blowing my mind. In some ways, this right here is sort of the capital of the free world, or at least a symbol for it. And as a student of history, I am really excited to be standing here again. Plus, as you know, if you journeyed down Route 66 with me, I'm a huge fan of Abraham Lincoln. And I just can't look at that house without thinking, wow, Abraham Lincoln lived there. That's crazy. There's the West Wing over there with the Oval Office. The President of the United States gets to hang out in there. Ooh, I don't know if you can see, but a whole bunch of people are actually leaving out of the building right now. Whoa. That's a lot of people. I don't want to get into politics ever because who cares what my opinion is? Also, I'm not very knowledgeable. I don't feel comfortable going into politics. People get really nasty about politics. I don't know why. But I must say, if I was invited into that building, no matter who the president was, I would go. And I would just want to see the Lincoln bedroom where Lincoln had his office. Just walk around inside. Can you imagine how cool it would be to spend the night at the White House? That would be amazing. Plus, very famously, there are rumors that it's haunted. And by none other than Abraham Lincoln himself. Even Winston Churchill, while staying at the White House, claimed to have seen our 16th president in ghostly form. Pretty awesome. So many languages being spoken out here. People from around the world have come to look at this building. All right, I guess I gotta be moving along. After all, I'm just here today and a little bit of tomorrow, so I've got a lot of things to see. There's about 8 million amazing historical things, places, sites, museums, monuments, museums, probably some mastodons somewhere. At some point in the hopefully somewhat near future, I've got to make another trip to DC. Dive deep into all the Lincoln spots, Ford's Theater. We can talk about General Lafayette here. But today I think I'm just gonna stick to a couple of biggies. And when it comes to biggies, it doesn't get much bigger than this. Would you look at the size of that obelisk? Wow, that, my friends, is the Washington Monument. Look, I can hold it in my fingers. Measuring just under 555 feet. That is the tallest stone structure in the world and the world's tallest obelisk. And at one point, it was the tallest building in the world, I'm pretty sure. Wow, 111 alleys tall. That is a big, pointy building right there. They started construction in 1848, but then I think about 6 years later, somewhere in the 1850s, they actually had to stop because they ran out of money, which is why this obelisk is actually 2 different colors. You can see actually pretty darn clearly where the first section of the monument ends. That's about where it was halted and left for the entire duration of the Civil War. When Lincoln was walking around, it was just a stump right there. It took more than 20 years, and I think almost 10 years after the Civil War to get started again on this bad boy. But as you can see, eventually they nailed it. Wow. That thing is very impressive. I wish we could get up close, but right now it looks like they're undergoing a little landscape renovation or something. I have no idea what they're doing over there. Ooh, looks like at least this side is undergoing a little turf restoration. Yo! Stay off of my turf! It's crazy that the White House is just right there, the executive mansion, and then right here out of the windows, an enormous, very pointy monument to the first executive. Tallest stone structure in the world. Impressive. Most impressive. So hard to get a sense of scale when you can't get up close to it. But like I said, 111 5-foot people, 111 alleys would have to stand on each other's heads to be able to stick their hand all the way on the tippy top. Hard to see because of this hill, but the Lincoln Memorial is just over there. The White House is just over here. And if we come around to the east side of the Washington Monument, you're back on the National Mall with a view of the United States Capitol. Whew. A lot of walking out here today. Wow, look at that. The Capitol is down there, and then surrounding it all over the mall here are multiple museums, most of which are part of the Smithsonian Institution, and the vast majority of them are free. I love looking at the big stuff. I really want to go look at the Capitol, but you know what? First, there's some stuff in one of these museums I really want to check out. Hey man, this is a looky-loo day, okay? And Lou wants to do some looking right over here. It's time to pay a visit to the National Museum of American History. There are so many treasures in this place.
Oh my gosh. Would you look at this?
My dream car, the 1989 Batmobile.
Dude, Michael Keaton, aka Batman's sweet whip. This version of the Batmobile was designed by a guy named Anton Furst, who did all the art direction for that 1989 Batman movie. Dude, that is so iconic, so friggin' epic. This was my dream car as a kid.
Probably the most gorgeous of all the iconic 80s movie cars.
Also probably the least practical, you know. You wouldn't really want to drive a turbine, jet-powered car around town.
But then again, the ladies seem to love it, so maybe you would.
That is pretty epic. I didn't even know that car was in this building. I am so stoked right now.
Okay, history. Let's go upstairs.
This is a big place with a lot of epic stuff in it.
But possibly the most epic thing of all
is right inside here.
Because this museum is the home of the Star-Spangled Banner, the actual American flag that inspired our national anthem.
This was the gigantic flag raised over Baltimore's Fort McHenry on September 14th, 1814, to celebrate a victory over the British during the War of 1812.
Luckily, a young man by the name of Francis Scott Key was on hand to witness those stars and stripes fluttering above the fort
and be inspired to write the words that became our national anthem.
This flag stayed in the family of Major George Armistead, the guy who commanded Fort McHenry during that British attack, for years and years, until it was eventually donated to the Smithsonian. And it used to be 30 by 42 feet, but over the years, people snipped off a few mementos, shall we say. Pretty crazy, though, that it's still this intact. 200 years old. Dude, that's crazy. We just saw the actual Star-Spangled Banner.
Now let's see what else we can find.
I wasn't actually sure if I was going to be able to get any footage in the Star-Spangled Banner because it says no photos. People were getting yelled at to put their camera away, but then the lady was like, well, your camera doesn't have a light. Just do it quickly.
They were very worried about light damaging and fading the old flag.
Understandable. The American flag must never fade.
Ah, okay. Here's what I was looking for. I figure if we've seen the White House today, we might as well see some other stuff
related to the presidency. Oh, look, Federal Hall.
That's where George Washington was inaugurated. We were just there.
Oh, speaking of George Washington.
Look at this. This was George Washington's telescope. And look at this. This is his portable writing case.
See, guys? Satchels are cool. Even George Washington had a satchel.
That's weird, man. That really makes him feel real to stare at some of his stuff just sitting in here.
Wow, there's all kinds of George Washington stuff.
They even have items from George Washington's Philadelphia home. Look at this. This was President Ulysses S. Grant's carriage, the one that took him to his second inaugural.
Inaugural.
What a word, huh? I mean, we only use it every 4 years or so. And how about this coat and top hat worn by President Grover Cleveland, everyone's favorite president, right? Whoa, so much amazing stuff in here. Dwight D. Eisenhower's uniform. Teddy Roosevelt's chaps. No, that's not a joke. Those are actually Theodore Roosevelt's freaking chaps. And speaking of Roosevelt's, look at this. This is FDR's
Fireside Chat microphone.
That's the microphone he used to speak to the nation.
Thanks to FDR's Fireside Chats and the invention of radio, he was really the first president to come right into the American living room and become part of the family. And it sure couldn't have come at a better time. With the Great Depression and World War II, this was one of those microphones.
And look at this. This is the thing I most wanted to see.
When I was in Springfield on Route 66 this past summer, I was so bummed out.
Because they had Lincoln's house and Lincoln's toilet, but they didn't have one of Lincoln's top hats.
And there it is, right there.
Abraham Lincoln's top hat.
He had quite a number of top hats. This isn't just any old run-of-the-mill Abraham Lincoln top hat.
This is the top hat he wore to Ford's Theater on the night he was assassinated. This is the last top hat that Lincoln ever wore.
Now, you guys know me. I love a good hat, but I don't love my hats as much as Lincoln loved his.
And he put those things to good use, too. People always described Abraham Lincoln as having all kinds of papers and notes and weird stuff stashed up in his hat.
Abe's top hat was combination hat and satchel.
It's a head satchel.
That is amazing. Not even the Batmobile can top seeing that for me.
Words can't describe the way that I'm feeling at this moment, looking at this hat. Man, I'm filled with all kinds of reverence and awe, but at the same time, I gotta be honest.
Look at that hat. Abraham Lincoln had a huge noggin.
I guess that makes sense, though. I mean, after all, he did have to fit a lot of good ideas up in that head of his. If you never saw the episode where we went to Springfield, Illinois, and saw the hometown of Lincoln, his house, his grave,
I highly recommend it.
one of my favorite videos that I've ever done. Ooh, look at this. Here's some items related to the assassination of President William McKinley, including his last teacup and his wallet that he was carrying.
Not a lot of people talk about good old President McKinley.
Probably because in the aftermath, Teddy Roosevelt, who was vice president, became the president
And basically completely stole the show.
Look at this. This is George Washington's easy chair.
I never thought I'd see George Washington's easy chair.
Turns out it was pretty easy. Just had to come to the Smithsonian. All right, moving right along. We gotta move like lightning today.
The only bad thing about these museums is that they close kinda early, and I just have the one day really to look around.
Although it's probably better that I don't have time to linger.
Otherwise, my eyes would have started to sweat around that Lincoln top hat, believe me.
So many fascinating artifacts from all over American history.
Look at this, for example, a 200-year-old house that used to stand in Massachusetts, disassembled and then reassembled to tell the story of 200 years of American living.
Definitely not your usual local history museum's exhibit, huh? Whoa, look at this. It's Ben Franklin's walking stick.
The Benjamin Franklin.
I won't put politics on paper, it's a mania. So I refuse to use the pen in Pennsylvania.
Ben Franklin, a man who was never president, but was just as important.
He left this particular walking stick to his good friend George Washington when he passed away. That's crazy.
And then I love this. This is a very American thing because just a few steps away from Ben Franklin's walking stick that he gave to George Washington is an equally important artifact in the mind of Americans.
It's Indiana Jones's hat and whip.
This is apparently one of the hats from the Last Crusade.
Dude, that is amazing. It is so awesome to get a close-up look at Indiana Jones's stuff.
Like I said, Indiana Jones's hat, Ben Franklin's walking stick.
Literally right next door to each other. They've got a lot of other political and technological artifacts in here, but they also have this. It's the Swedish Chef. Look at, he is an icon indeed.
Where else but America could a young Swedish immigrant with seemingly no cooking skills whatsoever
become a famous and well-known celebrity chef, huh?
That's a real Swedish chef. Jim Henson touched that.
Yeah. We also have some other stuff in here, like this wheel, this sewing machine,
and of course,
a light bulb. What a good idea. Ooh, here's a piece of Plymouth Rock in there.
Oh, I can't wait to go back to Plymouth Rock and show you guys what it looks like. Just so small.
But I never would have gone to Massachusetts if I had known I just had to come to the Smithsonian to see Plymouth Rock.
Let's see what we have downstairs.
Ooh. Would you look at the size of that locomotive?
Oh, that is a very early steam locomotive.
The John Bull locomotive, 1831.
Dude, in the grand scheme of things, that's really not that long. It's amazing to think how far we've come in just 150, 200 years.
I mean, I just flew from Los Angeles to New York.
And then rode in this like bus van thing down to Washington, D.C.
All in the space of just a few days.
Just a few generations ago, that would have seemed like some kind of crazy witchcraft.
Yes, sir. I'm grateful for today's transportation technology, although sometimes I am jealous of the,
style.
You know, the panache of, prior transportation.
I mean, our cars look good. Well, some of our cars look pretty good.
But I think modern transportation's lost a little of its swank, you know what I mean? Look at this. Do you guys know what this is? H. Nelson Jackson and his driver/mechanic, Mr. Crocker, and this bulldog named Bud crossed the entire continent from sea to shining sea in 1903. Well before there were any roads to do it on.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Their trip was the first step in establishing the need for national highways, and that's their actual car right there, the Vermont.
I once drove from sea to shining sea in a Nissan Versa, which I rented. Not as difficult as driving in that, but close.
Someday I'd love to travel across country by train, but only if I could go in a locomotive like that.
See what I'm saying about style? How swanky is that?
Or even this. Oh man, I'd love to take something like that down Route 66. Speaking of which, this kind of reminds me of being in one of those museums along Route 66. The old-timey cars.
The fun mannequins.
I don't know, has a very familiar vibe, don't you think? Ooh, look at this old L-train car from Chicago.
Just something about the style of the past is so amazing to me.
Well, I guess not all the style of the past.
Remember these? These were great.
Whoa, look at this. It's Bozo the Clown.
And they only have part of his head.
That is so scary. Why couldn't they just finish that mannequin and put that on top? What?
Ooh, Bozo.
I know that for a generation before I came along, Bozo the Clown was so awesome, friendly, happy. But I was never happy about Bozo the Clown.
Bozo the Clown always looked really scary to me. I just don't get it.
Bozo the Clown just wasn't my guy. You know who my guy was?
Fred Rogers. Fred Rogers was so important to me as a kid. I really felt like he was my best friend.
And wouldn't you know it, there's a little piece of Fred Rogers memorabilia right over there.
When I saw some of the pieces from the neighborhood of Make-Believe in Pittsburgh just a few months ago, I really almost lost it. I almost wept.
And this display case right here is just about to do the same thing to me, because look at that. There is Mr. Rogers' sweater. Not to mention Prairie Dawn and Oscar the Grouch, who I'll get to in a second. Mr. Rogers' sweater.
I'm at a complete loss for words.
The feels. Just all of the feels.
Would you be mine? Would you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor?
Okay, elephant in the room. This is also awesome, and I am about to freak out. That is Oscar the Grouch.
Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street tag-teamed my childhood.
They taught me to love to read. They taught me to love learning.
They taught me about love and acceptance and diversity and being open-minded.
And this guy right here taught me that sometimes it's okay just to be grouchy.
According to the sign, this Oscar the Grouch dates from around 1989, just a little bit probably after I was starting to be too cool for Sesame Street.
But I'm gonna be honest with you. If I was home during the morning and the TV was on, I would still watch it. Guilty pleasure for quite a long time.
Look at that, that's where Carol Spinney would hide and stick his arm up into Oscar. Maybe we shouldn't phrase it that way.
A Muppeteer may have to help bring him to life, but come on everybody, Oscar the Grouch is still very, very real.
Have you guys ever seen the first Sesame Street movie, Follow That Bird? Oscar the Grouch has the best song in that movie.
Grouches of the world unite, stand up for your grouchly rights.
Don't let the sunshine spoil your rain. Just stand up and complain.
Stand up and complain.
I always thought that would make a great punk song, or at least a great cover.
Wow, Prairie Dawn is also here, and I like Prairie Dawn just as much as the next fella, but only as much as the next fella. Oscar the Grouch, that's a whole other level. Although look how tiny Prairie Dawn is compared to the giant trash can dwelling Oscar the Grouch. She's so little and petite.
Just a couple of days ago, I was in Queens in New York looking at the Jim Henson exhibit, and just something about the Muppets, man. Or Sesame Street characters. I saw Big Bird over there.
Who, by the way, is voiced and operated by the same person that does Oscar the Grouch. Two completely different personalities.
Anytime I see any of those characters, I start to get really emotional. It's weird.
It's like seeing your best friends again or something after like years of separation, you know?
Kind of funny too, because Oscar the Grouch, Mr. Rogers, things I loved in my early childhood, and then the Batmobile.
Something that defined the middle of my childhood. Ooh, and I have the feeling we're gonna see more. I remember there being a couple more really interesting things down here.
But it's been 8 years. A lot of things could have changed.
Oh, dang. No Kermit the Frog down here.
Last time I was down here, they had Kermit the Frog. They had one of the Dumbos from the 1955 version of the ride at Disneyland.
They had a bunch of stuff from I Love Lucy. All that appears to be missing right now.
Luckily, I just saw Kermit the Frog in the exhibit in New York.
Otherwise, I'd be super bummed out right now. If he's still here, I can't find him. I was just told that like these ruby slippers from the Wizard of Oz that have gone off display for now.
Some of the other items I was interested in seeing are being reshuffled around as they work on a new exhibit upstairs.
Boo! Well, at least I have an excuse to come back, actually.
Well, I looked and looked and looked for my Muppety friends, but unfortunately the museum closed, so if they were in there, I definitely missed them.
Oh well, now we're back on the National Mall.
A mall full of museums. See, that's what we need. We don't need malls full of Sephora. I do plan on hopefully coming back this year when it's much, much warmer and getting a longer, more in-depth view of everything I could sink my teeth into in this city. I've been here before, but it's been a long time, and you and I have never been here together, so I think for a first time dipping the toe in, we've done our duty today. The fact that it's 37 degrees, very windy, and possibly going to rain means it's probably time to hotel and sleep well. Stay tuned, and I'll see you guys in just a little bit for some more adventures. Bye-bye. Love liberty. By the way, I always hate mentioning it, but every once in a while it becomes a necessity, part of the job, I guess. Spring is on the way, summer is coming soon, which means more trips, more crazy episodes of crazy adventures. And because, sort of like PBS, this show is 100% audience funded, I have to post these links every once in a while. Here's how you can help out. We got sweet hats and t-shirts, and there's ways to pledge monthly if you derive some entertainment from it and want to leave a tip. It's kind of like being a juggler and having a little bucket you could throw something into if you enjoy these episodes. But if not, don't worry. This stuff will always be free, like America. Also, there's social media and other stuff down in the description. And I've done my duty and said the sales pitch, and now I can really go home and sleep well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. God bless America, and God bless Randomland. Whew, now I can't get the image of that Bozo the Clown head out of my mind. It's just burned in there. It's terrifying. Maybe the scariest thing I've ever seen.